I am really curious why someone relatively smart like Trump would do something so stupid. It's a meme coin, there's no underlying value, there's no technology behind it. You mint it on Solana and you trade this bubble. So we know that, well, at least we've seen it with at least 16,000 coins that they trend to zero given enough time. So why would a president want to risk his reputation?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have Willy Woo joining me for the first time since 2021. I can't believe it's been 3 years. Willy, how are you doing? Update us.
Great. It's been, gosh, close on 4 years now, right? I've been off the podcast scene for a while.
Yeah, you took a
Raising
break.
raising two young daughters, so it's
Oh.
been great. And yeah, like the markets have changed quite a lot since the last time we spoke. A lot more has happened, much more adoption, and so yeah, every cycle's different. It's always interesting.
Well, everyone follows you for your analysis and your insights. You're one of the OGs. So I'd love to get your take on just how far we've come in the last 3 years, because you're right. The last time I talked to you, I feel like we were sailing up to what we thought were going to be the six figures. And then we crashed
Mm.
and had a pretty rough bear market. And now we finally come back around, and suddenly it's the talk of the presidential campaign and the new White House administration. So what's your take about what happened over the last 3 years?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, the laser eyes kind of jinxed it. It was an interesting cycle, the last cycle. We had a lot of uptake on the futures exchanges. Obviously, the CME came in on the tail end of 2017, and over that time, we had a development in the futures market, effectively trading paper bets on Bitcoin. And the last cycle was very dominated by paper. And so if and this is the thing is that when I do my work, which is looking at what's happening with the transactions on the blockchain, where you can kind of get a good read of what's happening with investors with spot, you don't get the full picture of what's happening on the derivative side of things. And whilst there was a lot of buying on the underlying spot Bitcoin, there was a lot of bets coming in on the tail end of the bull market. I think we touched 70,000 for a second time. And then the amount of paper bets on Bitcoins went through the roof. So you don't in that phase of the market, you don't actually need to sell your Bitcoins, right? If you want to exit, if you're like an investor, a sophisticated investor, you wouldn't sell your Bitcoins. You would just hedge them out and sell shorts on your Bitcoins. And it turned out that you would collect something around 20% annualized yield by netting out to cash. And that's actually what happened. And that tipped the market. And then, of course, the weakness in the underlying crypto side of things, like Terra blowing up, and then a cascade of liquidations and like earn products blowing up, and eventually FTX blowing up. We had a very, very pronounced bear market as a lot of coins got dumped. And so it turned out the bottom of the bear market of 2022 was just after the FTX collapse, and that was when all the paper evaporated. They stopped their shorts, and a lot of bitcoins got scooped up off of the exchanges. Exchanges. Some of that was probably custody risk, but I think a lot of it was bought up, and that marked effectively the start of January 2023 bull market. And the interesting thing about this cycle right now is, of course, spot is back in, right? We've had the ETFs come in finally, and that has allowed the institutional type and also high net worth types to buy the ETF through traditional, TradFi exchanges. And so where previously, if you wanted exposure to Bitcoin, there was no real, you had to do offshore exchanges, really sort of grey water, sort of regulated markets is sort of regulated, but now you've got so you could only get long exposure through the CME. Now with the spot, that's brought a lot of spot dominance back into the game, and that's much more bullish for Bitcoin. If you think about bets on Bitcoin, that's effectively debasing the currency, right? Because if I am wanting to buy Bitcoin and I have to buy spot like before futures, then someone very, very rare in the world who has Bitcoin has to sell it to me, and they've got to be convinced to sell it to me. But with the invention of futures, someone can say, "I'll take that bet with you," and they can sell me that exposure. So that's quite a bearish pressure. It's a debasement on the 21 million finite supply. And so with spot dominance, it's much more bullish. And, so far, this cycle has been, I still consider we're in a re-accumulation cycle. People think we're bullish, but actually underlying it in the phase we're in, it's kind of that. If you remember, we chopped around for a long, long time around 10,000 in the last cycle before things went ballistic. We're in that phase of the market, but it's skewed bullish because of the ETF and MicroStrategy. So that's where we are now. And of course, a lot of the regulatory risk around the SEC is evaporated effectively this week with Gensler leaving office. And of course, we've got our first president that's about to be inaugurated effectively today.
Mhm.
That is pro Bitcoin and crypto, but Bitcoin, that's important. Um, so yeah, and a lot of talk around the strategic reserve. So
Yeah, okay. So I want to ask you
that's
about the Trump meme coin and also the strategic reserve. But first, just to dig into a little bit more of your analysis, do you think we're early then in the cycle before things get really crazy, or I mean, are you concerned at all about all the leverage that's in the system and some of the frothiness given the macro issues that are underlying all of this, and they're going to have to keep running the fiscal deficits? But how? I don't know. I look at the economic picture of the United States and I'm like, people are struggling, but the stock market's at an all-time high and the fundamentals, like, they just aren't there. I don't get it. How long can we keep this train really going?
I'm on that boat too. Actually, I'm expecting things to crash really hard sooner or later. And it's really hard. It's like kind of like playing chicken with a freight train.
Mhm.
If you want to time the top. Right now, like I model this stuff and quantitatively. The risk is high, meaning that the liquidity, the buyers, the spot buyers there isn't keeping up with effectively the price action that's happening. So we the risk is high for a drawdown, and it could turn on us. Um, I think the shape of the economy is not that great.
Mhm.
I think it's really hard to tell. Like if we're talking over the next what does it look like over the next year or two. Um, I think we're due for a pullback. But when, and that is quite hard to time, I think. Um, right now, there seems to be a lot of buying of risk assets. I'm not sure, I really don't know. Like I think
Yeah.
that Bitcoin now is traded like any other macro asset, $2 trillion, it's big enough. It's not like it in its own little bubble in its own cycle now, and we are orbiting macro. So if that turns, Bitcoin will turn as well. And of course, when macro goes up or down, Bitcoin's very accelerated. It's like that on steroids. So, um, but long term over the next 4, 8 years, of course, it's going to continue to outperform every single asset class on the planet.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like on the one hand, I feel like it could go to 250K and then crash maybe even higher than we're at now, or
Mm.
it could continue to kind of chop around and crash significantly to a level that none of us really expected. I feel like it could go either way, but agree. Long term, I feel like there's nothing else you'd want to hold. What's your take on this Trump meme coin and now Melania meme coin that reached crazy market caps? I feel like there's this debate on Twitter. Some people are so excited about this, and obviously the hardcore Bitcoiners are saying be really careful, and this isn't very presidential. What do you think?
I am really curious why someone relatively smart like Trump would do something so stupid. Um, because you think about it, like this is it's sure it's it's a meme coin. There's no underlying value. There's no technology behind it. Um, you mint it on Solana and you trade this bubble. And so we know that, well, at least we've seen it with at least 16,000 coins that they trend to zero given enough time. So why would a president want to risk his reputation? It looks great now because you've got market capitalizations in the tens of billions of dollars and looks like he's a genius. But you look at long term, you play the long game, like eventually this thing's going to pop. Like meme coins are the fad of this cycle. Every cycle there's a fad. That's going to go
Yeah.
away. And he'll be left with I don't know how many millions of people that have bought this coin, and they'll be going, I lost a lot of money over Trump, right? And he's the president. That's a very privileged situation. So I'm very, very confused with why he chose to listen to probably his advisor. I don't know, but it just seems like that's like a very fast money grift, and I don't see any long-term strategy behind it. I think it's an absolutely stupid idea. For someone that's supposed to be wise at his stage of his life, I just don't get it.
Well, this is a situation very similar to the Tuah Girl, Haley Welch, who also launched her coin. I feel like she didn't know what was really happening or how it was going to work, and she didn't intend to rug pull her investors. But like, you can't judge it by the intentions, right? A lot of people are potentially going to lose their savings, and some of them probably are
Absolutely.
investing in this who just they love Trump and they voted for him, but they know nothing about crypto, and they maybe are not calculating the risks properly. But what is this? I mean, what does this tell us about the incoming kind of environment that we're going to have? Because before, I mean, Gary Gensler would have kind of shut something like this down. There might have been enforcement actions, but you can't really do that with the president and his family, can you?
Yeah, there's a big risk also to the system here because, like, effectively, it's a kind of a security like problem. That like what is it? 80% of the supply is controlled by
Yeah.
insiders. That's a security setup. Um,
Yeah.
and that's not if ethically that's not correct, right? If you're trading, you're issuing a security, there's a lot of rules to play by. I see that Michael Saylor's going in to have a chat because he's been playing by these rules for a generation, like 25 years, 30 years. I just don't get it. It's a risk to the system. If everyone's going to say, oh, now it's condoned by the president, and then we're going to have everybody trying to grift each other, like, what does that say to our society? It's like the tail end of of an empire, let's say. It's the I thought we were going to have a golden age,
Yeah.
right? That's the conversation. And you start your presidency with something this stupid and so grifty. I
Right.
just don't get it. It's
But I think it kind of speaks to what we were saying earlier, how things can kind of go one of two directions. And this is almost a perfect example of how it looks really shiny on the outside, but underneath is just a total mess. And all of I mean, in our economy at large, like misallocation of resources. And it's just been a bonanza because of all the money printing the last few years. And it's hit the average working person the hardest. And it's like, how is this going to play out? Because yes, I feel like when I was in DC for the inauguration ball, it's like there's such an energy of hope that there's going to be real change. And a lot of, his supporters were out there, obviously, thinking that this is going to bring the country sort of back to the greatness that it once had, especially economically. But how can we do that in a system where it relies still on printing money, right? So it's like eventually we have to crash, and maybe we're going to crash up and assets will keep going higher, and great for Bitcoin. But I don't know how this is all going to play out. I have to be honest with you. That's what makes me a little nervous. This episode is brought to you by Casa. As some of you know, I recently updated my self custody, and Casa makes self custody so easy, even if you've never held your own keys or used multisig before. Casa has a state of the art app and live experts standing by to guide you every step of the way. For those with large Bitcoin holdings, Casa just rolled out a new service. It now offers a holistic security advisory service. As a private client, you'll get a 7-step security overhaul, personalized consulting, and your own private emergency line for expert help when you need it most. Get 10% off your Casa plan at casa.io/Natalie. Next up, Speed, the fastest growing Lightning wallet in the world. Send and receive Bitcoin, swap with stable coins, and even snag gift cards to earn rewards, all in seconds. Download Speed via the QR code or the link in my show notes and use code CoinStories10 for 5,000 free sats. And finally, are you ready to take control of your wealth? The Bitcoin Way is here to empower you. Learn how to take full self-custody and eliminate all counterparty risk. Set up a node and become the master of your own transactions and enjoy true autonomy. And upgrade your cybersecurity and protect your online privacy like I did. The Bitcoin Way specializes in personalized one-on-one training to help you become fully self-sovereign. Schedule a free consultation today. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy times right now. I mean, probably everyone thinks they're in the craziest ti of times. But yeah, like, yeah, when money dies, right? We've
Yeah.
gone so far. Like the US, like if you look at it, we always think the money printers are going on and we're printing more money. But if you look at what's really happened with the expansion of M2, it's contracted. That's what's caused the bear market.
Mhm.
And so suddenly the US is paying, like, is it more than the military budget to pay the interest on their debt? And
Yeah.
they cannot, they're going to be bankrupt um, if the rates don't drop. And so
Mhm.
what happens then? Okay, great. Is people who own assets would do fine.
Yeah.
Bitcoin probably rally to the
Exactly.
millions, but that doesn't help everybody. It only
Right.
helps those who have assets. This whole
Exactly.
thing's, I just don't know what's going to happen. Is there an easy way out or a soft way out where um, there's not calamity?
Right.
So
I know.
yeah,
I know. It's like
how
Bitcoin is
many
that
years?
life raft. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what is it? 1971. We're coming to the end of this fiat era. It's been over 50 years. I don't know how much longer, you know, it can continue. Um, so yeah, interesting times.
Well, do you think we will somehow extend the fiat era through like a Bitcoin backed dollar? And this kind of goes to the question I was going to ask about, do you think there's going to be a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Because a lot of people are talking about how behind the scenes, like the powers that be, they already know that Bitcoin is what they're going to need to adopt next. They're going to need to back treasuries with Bitcoin. What are your what are your thoughts on that?
So that would be a new gold standard, I guess. I mean, there are a lot smarter people than me on the subject. If you back it with Bitcoin, um, maybe we can transition. I mean, I'm probably not the expert to, I don't know the inner workings of how you create a new currency and reback it on Bitcoin. I know how we got to this stage, and like we had a gold standard, and that did really get rugged. And I think that when you back a dollar with Bitcoins, you still have a very flawed system
Mhm.
because you've created the gold standard, which is absolutely rugged, right? The problem with the gold standard is you have one one location that holds the gold, and so during Bretton Woods there was an agreement, and the US having championed the victory over World War II. We will reconstruct the world, but you're going to use the US dollars, and we're going to put all the gold in Fort Knox. And trust me, bro, I'm good for
Mhm.
it, right? And it got rugged
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
1971, and what it did was it centralized all the countries to the US dollar, so that
Mhm.
now we're going to go to fiat. And we can all stay on fiat and not have that country on the gold standard and the guys on fiat sort of waning over time. And so if you get a Bitcoin backed dollar and it's still the US dollar being the reserve currency, we're back there where it's centralized. It's a lot better because we have real time auditability of the reserves. So you can't
Mhm.
easily say, um, you know, we're going to snip it, and we've never audited the gold supply backing all the world's currency is so crazy. So I think that it's a lot better, but it's still weak because you've got one entity holding so much Bitcoin to back a dollar, and I just don't trust that setup. I don't think that's the right solution. I think that there's all manner of crafty things that a nation state can do um, to get us off a Bitcoin standard and back to fiat. So yeah, just my
What would
2 cents.
What would be your ideal vision of how we get on the Bitcoin standard, and how governance would really work? Like, are you someone who believes in sort of the premise of the sovereign individual, where we're not going to have such powerful nation states anymore, and we're going to have more decentralized communities springing up where the individual really truly has like ultimate freedom and sovereignty? Or do you think that nation states are necessary and maybe will function better if Bitcoin is incorporated in the economic system? Like, how do you see that?
I think that the era of nation states being at its height of power is waning. Because you just look at the pattern of we've been dominant in nation states since the Industrial Revolution. And then before that, we were in an agrarian age, and what was dominant was kingdoms and empires. And before that, it was tribal, right?
Mhm.
And so it seems to me, if you've got nation states, that is like kind of the right structure in a very sophisticated industrial economy. When you move to a digital economy like we are now, there are limitations, and the boundaries around a nation state become very porous, right? You like a digital worker can go to any country on a tourist visa, not pay taxes, doesn't need a work permit. There's all these things that don't work, right? Taxation when you've got global digital workers doesn't work.
Yeah.
Printing money when like you talk to the digital nomads, they've been holding and stacking Bitcoin since over a decade because it solved their cross-border problems. And so
Mhm.
when a nation state loses power over printing their money, because that's the people now, where anyone can create their own currency, including Trump with Trump coin, um, the ability to tax, the ability to print money to fund a nation state starts to dissolve, and then you get like where can you fund a nation state? And I think maybe that's like a city state, like Singapore, where people want to be there for a specific reason because the talent's there, and
Mhm.
so you get smaller and smaller sort of agile entities that hold economic power. We still have the royalty, in the UK. That's vestigial organs. I think there's probably going to be a loose national boundary. You've got, intercity, inter-province connectivity and infrastructure you need to do, but the power probably goes to the cities.
Yeah.
And maybe a new thing arises. Yeah. So maybe if you go, well, if the nation states becomes weakened, then that suddenly means fiat and national currencies become weaker and weaker, and these digital currencies, well, really only Bitcoin, because everything else is more like an equity. Then yeah, that becomes the money, and we're back at the gold standard, but it's not paper backed. We backed paper with gold because we wanted to trade gold, but we didn't have technology to ship gold across the world at the
Yeah.
speed of light, right?
Right.
And so this technology can do that. So you don't need to back paper anymore. Why would you,
Yeah.
like do like I still like some places I have to like deposit a check. You know, in Hong Kong I have to deposit a check because the government is 30 years behind, right?
Mm.
And it's like that's the idea of paper-backed Bitcoin, I think. You know, the technology is way well past that. Um,
Yeah, it's so
yeah.
interesting. It feels like technology is empowering us to be so much more decentralized. But if you look at the geopolitics of the world, we're becoming more isolationist and kind of more nationalistic and closing ourselves off. It's going to be an interesting, I think, dynamic over the next few years. I saw that you predicted that one Satoshi would be 5 cents. And so $5 million Bitcoin. How do we get there, and what are your concerns as far as like things that might prevent us from reaching that?
Yeah, I mean that's I also said don't worry about the path to getting there. Look, I think that honestly, we're looking at this long range view, and like my favorite topic to talk about now is the long range view across 6,000 years of gold and silver as money, and where does it go, say 6,000 years to the future? And we're transitioning from using atoms, you know, some atoms with nice properties, gold, silver, that's hard to get more of, into um, a money backed or constructed from energy.
Mhm.
And the fiat thing doesn't count because it's a 50-year liquidity crisis, and we're paper overing this this time, this short time, right? It's not even a human lifetime when we're talking about 6,000 years. So if you go into the future, you cannot, you know, create a scarce commodity, right? Right now, I think we caught the SpaceX rocket booster for the second time. That thing will allow us to mine the solar system. There's no scarcity in gold or silver, absolutely not. And if you're looking 6,000 years in the future, even 50 years in the future, so the only way to secure a scarcity is with energy, because energy is always going to be scarce. Your economy, as it grows more, it's going to eat more energy to produce the stuff we want, and
Mhm.
so you've got to share it with the economy, and that means also that energy is scarce for securing the Bitcoin ledger. So that will work. Um, you know, I'm not saying the people say energy will be abundant. Yeah, but we'll use also abundance of the energy as well, and it'll all be consumed. So it'll be in check. So, like, what I'm saying is fiat money is going to die because we know that from every civilization, never survived. I'm saying that we need to get onto a commodity money, and gold and silver is not a possibility given the technology landscape. So,
Right.
therefore, the only way we can secure money is with energy. And we've got Bitcoin, and it's got no, you know, there's no second best. It's got 15 plus 16 years of head start of adoption. There's not
Mhm.
even a single competitor. Like, what's the next one? It's not Ethereum, that's proof of stake. And it's not geopolitically decentralized. It's not secured by energy. It's secured by like fiat, it's social consensus. Everyone agrees
Mhm.
um, that this thing has value. So the next one is Litecoin, I think. Right. That's so we've only got Bitcoin. So if you look at what if it's going to be the money for the entire economy, then money, all the money in the system equals world GDP and roughly all the value of the publicly listed companies. 100 trillion, 100 trillion, 100 trillion. They've always been relatively in check because you need this amount of money for this amount of
Mhm.
trade and this amount of um,
Yeah.
producing businesses. So that today is roughly 100 trillion, and that gives you the 5 cents.
Mm.
So it'll get there, and don't worry about how it's going to get there. But if you look at when it'll get there, you just trace the adoption curve of Bitcoin till it reaches near saturation, and
Mhm.
maybe that's 15 years or something like that. So that's it. And how it'll fail is if Bitcoin fails.
It sounds similar to what Halfini predicted too. I mean, his prediction was, I think, 10 million a coin, right? I wanted to ask you about Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy. It's been interesting to
Hmm.
follow some of the developments in the space. He's planning on announcing yet another buy, I think, for inauguration day. So, what do you think about his strategy?
Very clever. It's very clever, and I think only a veteran of public markets and a CEO that had a generation of understanding what you can do with a public company could have created this. Because really, it's clever, right? He's created effectively a 2x leverage instrument on Bitcoin. And if you look at the risks to liquidation, it's almost he's bet the company on it. It's the thing is he's only liquidated if Bitcoin fails to gain value over the course of around, let's say, 6 to 7 years. If it doesn't gain value, then the convertible debt, they won't convert to equity. Therefore, he'll have to sell Bitcoins to then pay the debt back. I've like for the next probably 10 years, he's going to be very, very safe from that. We've never ever seen Bitcoin drop below that in a consistent way. Like even if it wicks down, it's fine. He's not liquidated, right?
Right.
It's got to be 6 to 7 years later. These investors are not converting to equity, and then he's got to pay them out in cash. So it's very clever, and the leverage comes from the market effectively valuing it as a 2x because effectively you got that ATM and the convertible instruments that are accretive on Bitcoin. It's non-dilutive. You get more Bitcoins per share, so it's kind of like a pseudo yield, and therefore you can value it, more than 1 to 1 to the underlying NAV. So it's super clever. I mean, um, genius. Yeah, it's good bit of engineering, I would say.
Yeah, from an engineer. I mean,
Uh,
that's what his background is. Yeah, I know a lot of people that have done great on Bitcoin, but even better on MicroStrategy. So, but it's also interesting to read the TradFi people look at this and just their minds are blown, right? They
mm.
cannot wrap their heads around it. They're so critical. They're calling it all these names, and it's like, I mean, why is it so hard for people to just, I don't know, be open to a new idea and study it before they go so hard at criticizing it?
Yeah, because fundamentally, there's a lot to understand about strategy. Like, they will understand what he's using in the traditional instruments with the ATMs and the convertible debt, but they don't understand Bitcoin. That's very clear. And so to understand Bitcoin, you have to understand the fundamental technology and understand hard money. You need to understand the adoption curve of technology. There's a whole lot of things, and a lot of the stuff is, the venture capitalists will understand that more. The technologists will understand that more. But those are the guys that won't be necessarily understanding the TradFi side of things. And the TradFi guys, they I mean, they're coming into Bitcoin now, but I think we probably need to wait another 4 years for them to really get it. I work with TradFi guys, and some of them really understand it, and you can see these guys that when they understand it, they will hold MicroStrategy and they love it, and they just love it. They're like, can't go wrong with it, and so you need to understand both. And there's no incentive if you're really managing very large billions of dollars
Mhm.
in digital, not sorry, in assets. You're probably incentivized also to keep doing what you're doing and not tell your investors like this is this is a great investment. Because you can't replicate that as an asset manager. You can't replicate that in the TradFi world for most people unless you have your own public company. And like, and it can't be just a new company. It can't be any of these new companies that are also following the MicroStrategy playbook, because um, you need acceptance in the market. MicroStrategy is like over 25 years old.
Right.
Banks recognize it. There's a low risk to this company. It's been in the market so long. There's a decent treasury. All the numbers are solid. So, the risk rating is so low on it that you can do this kind of stuff. Seasoned CEO. Yeah, it's only Michael that is in the sweet spot where he understands technology,
Yeah.
understands the instrument he's playing, a public company. Yeah, there's a whole lot of things that have to align. So I do think it's pretty genius.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's why he's smiling so big lately. Okay, so
Yeah.
we have the spot Bitcoin ETFs, we have options trading, we have fair value accounting, we now have a pro Bitcoin SEC and Treasury Secretary. What do you think is that next big catalyst that's going to send Bitcoin up? Do you think it will be like a big corporation like a Meta saying they're going to buy Bitcoin, or the United States announcing they're going to buy Bitcoin? What do you predict?
Well, yeah, I actually think it's going to be a race of sovereigns
Mm,
now. Like, if that's like this thing the corporate treasury got started in the last cycle of MicroStrategy, and that's starting to get in this cycle, it's getting momentum. I think in the last cycle, very, very early, El Salvador and a few others that were quietly stacking. I think this cycle that starts to come out and the cycles ahead. And so it's everything becomes a race. And I don't know if there's a big unlock. I think it's one step after the next and the next and the next. BlackRock was the big one in this cycle to get the blessing of Larry Fink. What is it, 10 trillion BlackRock
wow.
manages, something like
Yeah.
that. You're not going to get fired to recommend Bitcoin. Asset managers would buy it themselves and not recommend it because it was risky for their career. Now I see,
Mhm.
CIOs of banks not only talking about Bitcoin as an investment, but they're talking about it as the next world reserve currency, which is crazy. You didn't see that last cycle. So it's safe to talk about it and recommend. So yeah,
Right. Love them or
it's
hate them. BlackRock sort of de risked Bitcoin for the institutional world and investors at large. Okay. Well, as we start to wrap up, anything
mhm.
else you want to share? What do you want people to be thinking about, or what do you want to leave people with?
Oh, just I'll just be cliche and say stack sats and be humble. And I think it's also a time to be humble as well because we've come so far. Um, and yeah, like do something with your bitcoins. Don't say sell them, but like you're gonna have wealth if you've been stacking. And I would
Mhm.
say do something good for the world for it with it. We're in kind of as we talked about earlier, times where, you know, it's a lot of people are struggling, and I
Yeah.
think it's time to really build a future. That's what's missing is that such short-sightedness. People aren't having kids. People aren't thinking about
Yeah.
the future generations, and I think do something good with your wealth as you're stacking sats. Yeah.
That's a powerful, beautiful message. It does make me think of one last question. I've met so many people through the space, and some of them are OGs like you. And it's like all of us know there's a community within Bitcoin who don't have to worry anymore. They have secured enough Bitcoin, they're totally fine. And then there are a lot more who got in later, maybe at high prices, and they don't have a lot. They don't. They're doing everything they can to accumulate, but with everything getting more expensive, even hearing price predictions that are seven figures, it's like, well, a house is now going to be $10 million because of all the money printing. What do you say to those people that are, they got in later, they feel behind, they don't have a lot of Bitcoin, they don't know if it's going to be enough, and they're trying to be optimistic, but they can't see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Stick with the process, maybe. Like it's easy to be short term focused and think about the path we weave. But if you were to look at if there's 8 billion people on the planet, if we spread the 21 million bitcoins, the target is like 0.002 bitcoins. It's a very small amount. And we're talking about this over less than a generation, maybe 15 years. That's the process. Just stick with it. And yeah, I don't know what else to say there. It's we, I know that people are now not buying real estate. They are it's too much hassle. They're
Yeah.
buying their bitcoins. Like that also means that the bitcoins are going to outpower the growth of your rent if you don't own your own house. Um, it's actually a tool that you can use every day. And
Right.
in my industry, the products are being built for you. Um,
Mm.
there will be a time when it's already happening, where you don't need to sell your bitcoins. You just front it as collateral. You can borrow fiat, and spend that. Don't use leverage, too much leverage.
Right.
You might borrow 5% of your value of Bitcoin or something. You can do it in a way it doesn't get rehypothecated. It doesn't
Mhm.
get like all the stuff that happened in 2022, where people took your Bitcoins and then gave it to some trading firm unknown, and they would give it to some, and then you realize it's in DGen bets at 3AC or something. That's gone. We've got, on-chain multi-sig, where you know that those coins aren't moving and you've got a signature. So these types of products are being built. Um, the average person now will wait a cycle or two. You'll be able to play the playbook of what the wealthy do, which is never sell your assets. Use it, borrow more fiat, which is going to zero, live your life, and you're
Such
helping fiat die.
Yeah, that's such good advice. It's all about perspective and don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to the 2011 to 13 OGs. We're all gonna make it. We're all on the Bitcoin arc. So thank you so much, Willie. It's always so great to talk to you. You're just such a positive voice in the space. I hope everyone follows you. I'm gonna link your work, and hopefully people will watch our first interview because that was really cool. We got your whole backstory, and thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie. It's been a pleasure. Good to catch up.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Make sure you're subscribed to the show and hit that notifications button so you never miss any new content. Also, check out our weekly free newsletter at thenewsblock.substack.com. This show is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing should constitute as investment advice, and you should always do your own research. I'm always open to feedback and guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out at info@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.